Hi, my name is Nick Burnham and I'm down here at Darthaven Marina having a look at the steps involved in antifouling a boat. And we're starting off with the chandlery here. They've got a very well equipped chandlery with most of the kit that you will need in order to carry out the process. Now the boat that we are doing today has never been antifouled, but this video is equally relevant to a boat that you're doing from scratch as we are, or a boat that's been antifouled many times before. And the most obvious bit of kit that we're going to need today, of course, is the antifoul paint itself. But as well as that, we've also got some interstrip here. This you would use if the boat has been antifouled many times in the past and you want to take some of that off. That basically softens the antifoul to make it much easier to scrape off. We've also got some Trilux proper drev. This is for doing outdrives. The boat we're doing is an outboard engine boat, but if you had outdrives and wanted to paint them, that would be the stuff that you would use. We have some personal protection equipment, so some goggles, a face mask, some gloves. We have some primer. Again, that's for if you're antifouling from scratch. If you're doing a boat that's already been antifouled, you won't need that. We have some sandpaper. We have some masking tape, very important. Some rollers, a paint tray, and the paint roller itself. So we're going to take you outside, put all this together, and show you how you antifoul a boat. The first job is to work out where the waterline would actually be, and the way to do that is to put the boat in the water and then mark it with a Chinograph pencil as to where the waterline is. Alternatively, if the boat's been in the water for a little while, there may well be marks on the hull where you can see where the water has been. So mark where the Chinograph actually goes on the waterline, and then you want to think about working about an inch or two above that so that you're allowing for the boat to be loaded, fueled and everything else. So normally work out where the waterline is, add a couple of inches, mark it, and that would be the point that you're antifouling to. Obviously you need to do that right around the boat. So once you've got your marks all the way around the hull, the next thing to do is actually draw a line along between the marks to give you an idea of where you're actually masking to. So once you've got your line in place, the next thing to do is actually mask it with some masking tape. This needs to be the sort of stuff that is designed for the job, in that it comes off pretty easily once you're done. What you don't want is to leave a load of residue on the boat when you take the tape off. So this is a fairly temporary measure. Now this is the first time that the boat's been antifouled, and particularly if the boat is brand new, you need to use some degreaser. And what this does is take any releasing agent or any other materials off the hull to give you a completely bare surface to prime and start working with. Now once you've got your surface completely clean and prepared, you need to then actually etch the surface so that the primer will stick to it. If you just antifoul and primer straight onto a shiny hull, it won't stay on. And the way to do this is to use a sander. Now the important thing to remember here is that you're in danger of breathing in quite a bit of potentially toxic dust. So you need proper breathing apparatus, a proper mask, get your sander and start keying up the surface. Once you've got your hull etched and ready to go, then it's ready to add your primer. Now it's worth just thinning the primer down slightly by about 10%, it just makes it go on a little easier. Then it's a case of just charging your roller and then gently rolling it onto the hull of the boat. So the primer has to be left to go completely dry, and we're at the stage now where you would be if you're antifouling a boat that had been previously antifouled. So if your boat's been antifouled, it really is a case of just masking it up, as we've got here, around the level of the previous antifouling, having obviously cleaned the boat thoroughly. Normally you'd pressure wash as it came out, and then you're at the stage we're at now, ready to roll the fresh antifouling on. So this is the last stage. This is putting the actual antifouling on. If your boat's already antifouled, then this is the stage pretty much at which you'd start. You'd have the boat lifted out of the water, pressure washed, mask it up, and then your antifoul would go straight on. A couple of points to be aware of here. The first is you really should be wearing a vapor mask for this, because the thinners in the antifoul are very strong and you don't want to be breathing that. The other element to mention is the shores. Obviously you mustn't move the shores that are propping the boat up. What you need to do there is, when you finish the boat and it's all dried, ask the boatyard to then move the shores for you and repeat the process of priming if it's needed, and then antifouling where the shores were. The blocks that the boat's actually sat on, normally you would touch those in as the boat gets lifted prior to being launched. Now before we finish, there is just one final area to consider. The boat that we antifouled is fitted with an outboard, so that tilts clear of the water, but of course a lot of boats have drive systems that stay in the water. Predominantly you're talking about shaft drive, IPS or out drives. Now shafts are stainless steel and bronze and they tend to get left alone, but out drives and IPS, they're well worth painting, but you don't use your normal anti-fouling paint for these. These use an aerosol paint. It's a different type of paint and it's very important that you use the right one for the process. Now again, the system is much the same. If these have not been painted, they need to be keyed up first and then primed and then painted. But there are a couple of things to consider. First of all, you need to mask off the area around. Because you're using an aerosol, you don't want to get paint everywhere. You also want to mask off any decals that you don't want painting. And finally, you need to think about your anodes. They don't want to be painted over. So if you're fitting new anodes to the boat, then anti-foul first, then fit the anodes. Otherwise, mask those up. Now the last thing to consider with these out drives is you'll notice here there is a 1-inch gap between the anti-foul on the boat and the transom shield. And the reason for that is because the anti-foul on the boat contains copper and that can react with your transom shield. So if you've got out drives, when you paint the boat you want to be putting masking tape around the transom shield so that you maintain that 1-inch gap and you don't risk any kind of reaction problems.